Welcome to our Spoilercast for Death Note. The anime and the movie. We're inevitably going to spoil both. Have neither of us seen the live-action Japanese adaptations, right?
No.
So I'm sure. So those are safe, if that even means anything. But we're inevitably going to be comparing the anime to the movie, the Netflix original live-action thing that happened this weekend.
Yeah.
And I had a refresher. I broke my rule. So when I watch anime, because it's usually too long, like almost always, almost every anime has a problem where if it gets any popularity, the publisher's like, fuck quality, make more of it forever. And Death Note was a little bit of a victim of that because it has a clear ending point and then just awkwardly continues. And they're like, oh shit, the publishers wanted more. Let's make a whole new cast of characters for a really brief extra storyline. And so when I got through Death Note originally, I stopped the moment the real ending happened and just didn't bother with the rest of it. But just for the sake of revisiting it for the purpose of this movie, I did go and watch the entirety of Death Note now. So now I've seen all of it, and it wasn't worth. It was not worth continuing past the first proper ending.
Are you sure? I think that ending segment's really good.
But more importantly, doing all of this for the Netflix original Death Note movie was especially not worth it.
No, you got nothing in return for doing it.
Yeah, I would say the best part of the Death Note, like, bonus chapter, I guess, the Death Note DLC, is probably the ending, which is interesting.
Where he's just losing his mind and, like, running around.
Yeah. An interesting thing to highlight as just a starting difference between the movie and the source material is that Death Note as an anime ends with two people facing off in a warehouse saying, aha, my master plan's gonna outsmart you. Well, actually, I thought of your master plan, and I made a master plan that outsmarts your master plan. And then eventually somebody loses and dies. In this movie, it ends with a chase scene. Like, that's a chase scene and massive destruction and people yelling at each other. Like, that's the core difference between these two movies in a lot of ways.
Yeah. That does speak a lot of volumes for how different this movie is compared to the source material. So
let's go ahead and just talk exclusively about the anime for a little while, just to run through that a little bit. So the anime starts off with just Book arrives in life of normal schoolboy, but who turns out to not be normal schoolboy because he's top of his class / maybe top of the country or something as far as like testing scores goes and everything like that. He's getting ready to graduate high school and all that. And he's also just like a megalomaniac, like psycho person that thinks that he is God's gift to humanity and that he can single-handedly reshape society. So
I mean, he's just a narcissist.
Yeah, he's totally he's a terrible person.
He just thinks his sense of justice is better than everybody else's because he was given the power to enact his own sense of justice.
He's one of those like really garbage human beings. Like he's not like Joker bad, like genuinely like unambiguously evil and chaotic. He's just like,
he's not inherently evil. He's just misconstrued on how to enact justice properly.
He's basically most fascists that are like, I'm just going to single-handedly fix the entire world, and anybody who stands up to me gets fixed along with it, basically. Like, that's his entire concept. So he's immediately like a lunatic, and it's great, because you're like, this guy's a monster, but immediately you're introduced to L, and you're like, oh, here's our actual protagonist, basically, is the guy trying to catch the monster we saw in the first episode.
Yeah. The idea of I have a plan to make the world a better place, and anybody who stands against me means that they like the world that exists now, which means that they're bad people. It's one of those kind of like, yeah, you can really get some momentum with that for the first couple of times, and then people start getting really salty about it after a while and start coming after you, which is almost immediately. By the way, like almost immediately after he gets the book, it's like, and L's on the case, and it's like, wow, that didn't take long for someone to get very upset with your sense of justice.
And they make it pretty clear what's happened, too, because at that point, he's killed, like, hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Like, he just dove into that. Like
Well,
one of the like really morbid background details happening in the anime is that every episode you're constantly being reminded that like several pages of the notebook have been filled out again with people's names. For those that don't know, if you write somebody's name in the death note, they die one way or another. By default, they get a heart attack within 40 seconds. There's a 40-second countdown, and then they die of a heart attack.
Yeah,
but if you write additional details, that becomes their actual cause of death.
Yeah, so basically it's a God. There's a couple of ways that it works. So you need a death note requires a face and a name, and it requires the real name and a picture of and the actual face. So that way you can't just write in Keith Ballard and the hockey player dies on accident instead of Keith. And secondly, you can put in a multitude of things to a degree. If I remember correctly, there's like a limitation on the things that you can make a person do. But like if I remember correctly, I don't think you can make another person kill another person through the death note unless you put that person's name and visualize their face inside of the death note.
I'm pretty sure that it basically amounts to forms of just dying on the spot or performing an action before dying or just some sort of specific suicide method. I'm trying to remember all 37 episodes of Death Note or something, and I don't think anybody ever gets like mind controlled into murdering anybody. In fact, the entire concept of mind control is actually a very, very minor part of Death Note, to the point where like it's basically just amounts to you're going to die, but you're going to kill yourself somewhere where no one will find you, is basically what it often amounts to.
Yeah, I think Ryuk specifically says it's a suggestion rather than a command. So it's not that it's not so much that the person is doing something like following orders. They feel compelled to do this thing, like writing the name of Kira on the wall is something that compels them. But it's not. But like killing another person is an order. So like they just or same with what you said, going and killing yourself in the woods versus killing yourself like at your house. That's like that's a subtle suggestion. It's like Inception, and it was just kind of like whispers.
It was interesting because, first of all, the Death Note doesn't have too many rules, so it's not overly convoluted and complicated. Like there's actually only like a small handful of rules for the entire series as far as the book itself.
I think it was like 10 rules or something like that. And
exploring the rules themselves is part of the story. Like there's an entire plot line that's essentially Light is going to the Death Note and he's just killing criminals in a series of ways, literally as like he has like a control group that he's just killing normally where they just have a heart attack. And he has other people that he is experimenting on, giving them a series of different things and writing a bunch of different things for what's going to happen to them, just to see which things happen and which things don't, so he can learn how exactly the Death Note works and what its limitations are. So he's like, you die on the other side of the planet and it doesn't work, and you die while writing the real name of somebody else, and like it doesn't work because the telling somebody to kill themselves by writing knowledge they don't have means they can't because they don't have that knowledge. Like that's actually one of the rules, which is interesting.
Yes. Because like it's really weird because it goes into that field where the person killing them is supposed to be Ryuk. He's like the death god that goes and kills them. But so Ryuk knows, say for instance, Ryuk knows exactly who L is. He knows exactly L's name. He knows exactly when L will die. Like he can see the timer on it that shows how much longer they have to live. And, but like, so if you tell somebody, like you tell some random criminal, hey, when you die, write L's name on the wall. Like, even though Ryuk's the one killing him, he can't, like Ryuk's not going to tell him that information to write it on the wall.
I actually don't think that's even true. I don't think Ryuk actually kills anybody in Death Note. I think the journal actually has the ability to kill people, and that's it. Ryuk is so passive to the whole thing, and by the end of the story, there's multiple Death Notes circulating around, and the people that have each Death Note are switching, and you can't even keep track of which one's Ryuk's. And also, the one that Ryuk has is revealed over time to not even be Ryuk's, but another Shinigami's entirely.
It's a dead Shinigami's. Right.
No, it was the guy that he comes back later. He's like, "Give me back my notebook." Like that one
does he?
that one guy that he's the one that's pestering Mello, because Mello has his notebook at that point.
Right.
So like all the Death Notes belong to a Shinigami, but they just kill people and that's it. I think it's actually the book itself that does that, because even Ryuk has a Death Note that he can write other people's names into, because the series ends with him writing Light's name into his Death Note, and he just kills him with the Death Note.
Well, because that Death Note is a permanent Death Note, if I remember correctly. It's like one where, because if I remember what Ryuk said is like when you use the Death Note, like whoever uses the Death Note, they will not be allowed to be reborn. I think that was a stipulation.
If people use it could be different translations, so I'm not entirely sure. But in the translation I was going through, they were saying that anyone who uses the Death Note does not go to heaven or hell.
Yes, so that's what I meant. They don't get the rebirth of going to one side or the other. They just disappear, I guess.
Basically, like they're damning themselves in a different way by even doing it. Basically.
Yeah, it doesn't really explain it because it's not important to the plot, which it shouldn't be. But I guess they just cease to exist as a all matter of being. I don't know, but that's what Ryuk's Death Note's for. I believe his personal Death Note is meant for like, is specifically more meant for killing people who use Death Notes. Like, to make sure that they don't go to heaven or hell.
What the Shinigami do is they use their Death Notes to prolong their own lives, because if they can kill anybody they want with their Death Notes, and whatever life they steal from them gets added to their own. Yeah. Basically like Weeping Angels, actually.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
It's basically the same idea. Is like the leftover life they're stealing becomes added to their own, and that's how they prolong forever. And the Shinigami are actually really interesting in the anime, because they're just lazy little shits. They're just sitting around playing boring games and doing nothing, and sitting around in the demon world and just hanging out. And then every now and then, just every now and then they'll prolong their life a little bit more whenever it's like, oh, time to do that little chore. All right, who's someone I should kill? Whatever. And then they go back to like playing, I don't know, Go or something in this weird nether world.
Because they just like look. Don't they have like a thing that looks down to Earth? And they can just like see people and go like, I think they literally
just look off the ledge. Like they just look down.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. They can just like look to Earth and be like, yeah, that guy, and just like write his name and he just dies. The whole story basically starts because Ryuk's like, well, this is boring, and then he just drops a book off the edge. He's like, oops, guess I gotta deal with that now, and then the whole show happens. Yeah.
Because he just he's like, whoops, and intentionally causes hundreds of people to die. Because that's just a game for him, and the anime even ends with him like being like, "Well, this was fun, and I write your name in, and I'm gonna leave now." And that's how it ends. Like he just writes he writes Light's name and leaves.
Yeah, I mean that was the entire premise, was just that Ryuk was insanely bored and thought it would be fun to just follow around a kid with a Death Note.
Yeah, he's just entertaining himself. But what's fun about this show is that it reminds me a lot of why I liked shows like Breaking Bad and a bunch of other things, where like you'll have two characters that are essentially trying to kill or end each other in one way or another, and they're on different sides of the law or different sides of some sort of moral system or some sort of system of rules, and they both have their own, like, they have opposite but not entirely equal goals and a series of different rules about how their world can work. So you have L versus Light throughout this whole thing, and they both know things the other one doesn't. They both have systems the other one doesn't know about. And so you have, like, L is held back in that he's not somebody that's just going to run up to somebody and execute them because he suspects that somebody might be Kira, and he has to do with all these investigation things. He has to narrow down his target from the entire population of the world and stuff like that. And he's just going on intuition and investigation. Meanwhile, Light has this huge spectrum of abilities and powers and rules that his opponents just don't even know exist. Both the good and the bad.
They don't even know how he's killing them, which is the most important part.
Like, is he just does he just look at someone and they die? Does he just like imagine people dying in his dreams? Like, there's so many possible vectors of how this seemingly supernatural murderer works. And so not only that
omnipotent being just kills people from any place in the world. Yeah.
That's a genuine plot point. There's a part of the story where Elle is like, could this just actually be like a god? Like, am I trying to stop a god from killing people? Because that's a genuine threat when you have this fantastical of a murder situation going on where you're like, how is this happening? But he's tracking this person down across the planet, and he doesn't know about Shinigami. He doesn't know what the rules are. So while you see Light figuring out the rules and limitations of how his power works, you also have L then trying to play keep up, figuring out what Light has figured out about his own powers so that he can even diagnose what's going on. And then a series of really clever things happen over time because, like, what was it? Oh crap! What narrowed him down to Japan? Oh right,
what narrowed him down was
it was the murder times.
Yeah,
there were such specific times to the murders because he would
only murder people after he got off school.
Yeah, the first mistake that Light makes is he keeps getting off of school and just writing a bunch of names into his notebook. So L is able to, like, all right, this is like probably a Japanese student that goes to school and then comes home from school and then just kills people until it's time to go to bed all afternoon. Because like you could you could be via time zones and class schedules, you could start piecing together where this was. So then he starts airing. He sets up a body double of himself that happens to have the letter L in their name, so it's believable enough, and has their real name listed in front of them, and he puts them on TV, and he starts broadcasting it in different regions of Japan so that he can try to figure out which part of Japan Light is in, and Light takes the bait. Because Light is so egotistical and narcissistic, and like he sees himself as somebody who will smite people that dare challenge him, that he actually takes the bait. And it's great because he's a protagonist that is so petty that he makes mistakes for these really like he makes mistakes he shouldn't because he thinks he's so high and mighty. And that's that's the basis of the entirety of L getting as close as he does, and then the entire show ensues from there, because for like dozens of episodes, L is hunting Light while Light is being a whole lot more careful now after all those screw ups he made at the beginning.
Yeah, after the couple of whoopsies, he suddenly starts getting a lot more what's the word? He gets a lot more prepared when he starts killing people. I mean, I think he even starts killing people on a timer, right? He starts, like, delaying people's deaths.
Yeah, he starts being like, well, I can trick people. I can try to, like, try to erase the mistake I made in the past by, like, scheduling my murders for different times, because he realizes he can schedule them to happen whenever he wants to, basically, by just writing that time into the notebook and things like that. But what's really important is that the notebook never gets overpowered. Like,
the notebook never changes, too, which is really great. The rules are consistent.
It already has the ridiculously powerful ability to kill anybody if you write their name while imagining their face. And you have a few tricks you can do where you can change the circumstances of their death, which I think the most fantastical use of that was near the end of the series, where he has a woman burn herself to death so that the evidence in the area would get wiped out. But that's like that might be the most fantastical murder in the entire series, because for the most part he just has them do heart attacks.
For the most part, it seems it's easier to just do heart attacks because they're all just criminals anyways. So I think his logic was that, like, a criminal dying from a heart attack in a prison isn't that surprising.
No, it wasn't even. It wasn't even that it was too. It wasn't even that it was not worth the effort to write murder scenarios. It was that he actually was trying to send a message, because he's such a narcissist that he wanted to be seen as a god. This Kira character, he wanted to be seen as a god, so he was explicitly killing everybody in a incredibly obvious way, so that the pattern would be recognizable, so that everyone would know that this isn't a weird freak incident. This is literally like somebody's doing this, and that this is a new world that he's trying to establish.
It's like, I'm coming.
Yeah, so he specifically says, like, I'm going to kill them all with heart attacks, because they're going to recognize all of the heart attacks as being me at some point. And that's the point, was to establish this overlord, judgment Santa Claus murder man that's going to kill you if you're on the naughty list. And that's more or less what happens. And it gets really dark over the series, because by the end he's like, there's the threat of, like, killing people that are lazy and squander their potential and shit like that.
Yeah, it also gets to a point where it's dangerous to like it literally becomes that doxing is a killable offense.
Doxing is killable. If you even speak out against Kira, then you can get killed for it.
Yeah, it becomes like a weird dystopian world where no one knows who Kira is.
Yeah, which is his goal.
It's just the weirdest part, because I think that's the impressive part about Death Note, is that it is that, like you said, it is like kind of a fascist rule, but no one actually knows who this fucking fascist is that's killing people. Everyone just calls him Kira, but has no face, no name, like no real understanding of this person.
And society goes through waves. Like, at first, everybody's like, who is this mass murderer? He needs to be stopped. But then over time, one country after another slowly, like, kind of succumbs to his will and is like, yeah, I guess I embrace our new criminal murderer overlord that kills all the criminals constantly. Because, like,
that guy lowering crime rate, I kind of agree with him.
It becomes like what would have happened if Dr. Manhattan didn't leave at the end of Watchmen. Is that, like, at some point, so many people would be unable to actually do anything about Dr. Manhattan that eventually you just have to just accept his existence, because what are you going to do about him? And, like, this is that kind of thing. It's like people try to fight him and they always lose. And you start realizing that what he's doing is kind of helping society. So people are slowly coming to embrace that and give up on going after him, because everyone that sent after him keeps dying. But even that is clearly going to be a mistake, because what happens is one of the lackeys that he uses to use the Death Note for him, because a reoccurring plot point is that he would use other people to impersonate Kira with the notebook while he is under investigation, because then he can be like, well, look at me, not doing anything suspicious ever. Isn't that interesting? And I guess I'm not the suspect, and stuff like that. That guy makes an announcement that he's going to be killing everybody who squanders their potential and stuff like that. And Light's response, in his mental response, isn't like he's not thinking like, what are you doing? That's not the plan. He's like, we're not supposed to get to that part yet. It's too early, is his thought in his head.
Yeah.
So like, so it was his plan, even though it never actually happens, and he never goes that far in the show. So like, clearly, like, giving in to him is ultimately going to be wrong, because he's going to start going way too far. Even past even if you agree with the killing all criminals thing, he goes way past that point. And that's his plan.
Yeah, I think the point was to show that there is no end to his, like, what his world is. His worldview is just so impossible to achieve that, like, something even mediocre is like, let me just get rid of all crime. Okay, sounds like a ideal utopia. Sounds great. All right. And he's like, yeah, but what about those lazy people? Okay, well, let's, like, the criminals are fine, man. If you just get rid of the criminals, it's okay. He's like, nope, lazy people too. We also got to get rid of, it's like, okay, your world's not even just ideal anymore. Now it's just kind of like this ridiculous fantasy that I don't even, like, who lives in this world? Light? Is it just you? Like, who else lives here?
When Light's the greatest hypocrite ever, because of course he is, like, one of the people that would be killed under all the rules that he does, like, because he is he's a mass murderer. He's the most prolific murderer in the history of the world, but he's too much of a narcissist.
Doesn't he justify it?
Yeah, of course he self-justifies it.
Well, I'm saying, doesn't he have, like, a justification that, like, he knows that, like, by doing this, he sacrifices himself for, he's like a martyr?
No, he doesn't even see himself as a martyr. He thinks that he's the ultimate hero god, and that this is that his will is truth, and that nothing he ever does is wrong. Like, that's genuinely how he thinks of himself, because he's just a terrible person. Which is also something shown constantly with his interactions with Misa. A character that is, for me, one of the weaker parts of the show, because she is so weak-willed and so stupid that it's actually frustrating at times.
But that's the thing. She's actually not... She's not that stupid, and she's not that weak-willed. She's just that passionate about... She's just a devout follower. That's the thing, is that it's trying to show that other side of the coin where the Kira thing was a religion. It became a religion where people prayed to this god Kira. And she was like one of those people that was a devout believer because it helped her.
I think one of the issues is that as you get into what you might as well call season 2 with the bonus stuff, there's 2 other devout follower characters that are established that both feel more conceivable than Misa, who feels too cartoonish and too, like, deranged. By
that point, Misa's not that great of a character anymore, because, like by the time once Elle dies, then her purpose kind of just stops existing.
Oh yeah, the show forgets she exists. Like
Yeah,
she's held hostage for like an episode, and then she's put away in a hotel room. She's like, oh, isn't this nice? And she loses her memory after taking the deal with the eyes twice, so she only has a quarter of her remaining life left anyway. And then the show never acknowledges her again at some point. Like, by the time you're doing the final showdown in the warehouse, at some point prior, you had your final scene with Misa that did not feel like a final scene, and she never gets acknowledged ever again because the show just forgets her because she doesn't matter. Which is kind of freaky because she's a mass murderer that gets off the hook at that point.
I think it shows her at the end.
It might have glimpsed her, but like she definitely exits the story, and I don't remember anything happening to her.
No, nothing happens. I think the last time maybe it was the manga and not the anime. I can't remember which one, but one of them at the end just shows her wearing like one of those kind of like monk robe kind of things, and she's following other people that are doing like a giant like Kira cult thing still going on. So like the idea is that the dream of Kira still lives on in the hearts of others.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're getting a little mired in the details, but let's talk about the strength of the show, which is Light versus Elle.
Yes.
Like just that showdown, those two characters going against each other, because they're both characters that have stuff in common and counter to each other, to the point where Elle himself will before long admit that that Light was his first friend and stuff like that. And it's because he's this eccentric, awkward character that sits in chairs wrong and just half pays attention to people while constantly running on all cylinders, just processing and theorizing and figuring out what the hell is happening. And he is a ballsy motherfucker because he does some really ridiculous shit to the point where he's just going. Eventually, he starts showing up at Light's school in person because he's like, "You don't know my name," and I figured out that knowing people's names is the important part as to whether or not you can actually kill people. So I'm just going to walk right up to you and use this against you and try to and do everything I can to try to pin this on you, because he's still not sure if Light is actually the person, because he's much more reasonable in many ways, which is that no matter how much he attaches himself to the idea that Light is Kira, he's still saying like, it's a 5% chance maybe. He's the most likely suspect, but it could literally be anybody else in the world that I haven't considered yet. So he's constantly holding on to the idea that he could still be hunting the wrong person. So he does some really ballsy things along the way just to try to actually nail down what's going on. And it's really entertaining watching the two of them show down against each other, and then they're back-to-back interactions where like Light's constantly role-playing the like straight-laced, perfect like A student at school that's just so happy and helps police investigations and joins all the clubs and is popular with all the girls, but he's actually a mass murderer. But he has to he even does that thing where like I watched it with the English dub, and you can even listen to the voice actor switch back and forth, because he basically voices pretend Light the same way you would the same way you'd voice like the protagonist of like a Digimon or Pokemon show, like that kind of irritating, like perfect protagonist character. Like he's that he's that positive.
Yeah, where it's like hey guys, how's it going? But then when he's by himself, he's like, these goddamn disgusting people, and it's like, whoa, okay. Like,
and every time I want to kill someone, I'll eat a chip. Action chip eating scene. So like the transitions are great, and actually it was a surprisingly good English dub, because they voiced Elle with a character an actor that I've seen in a bunch of stuff lately, where he does Elle well, because he will constantly like trail off and go surprisingly low. Like you can they probably had to like compress his audio just to make him audible in half the scenes, because he'll keep like trailing off or going quiet and being clearly lost in his own world when he's talking to other people about stuff that's not as important about the thing he's actually thinking about. And it's such a textured voice. It's actually really well done, and it made the character a lot more likable, in addition to just the fact that the character is just kind of neat to begin with. And it's hard to explain without just really literally recapping the show, but just watching the two constantly go against each other and like raising and dropping facades and hunting for any little hint of detail that their opponent accidentally gives in that could get them closer to victory one way or the other. Like, that stuff's really engaging. And
Yeah.
I think the show drops off a little bit about halfway through the memory racing storyline. It's like everyone points at the stuff after L as being the low stuff, but I think that also the show gets a little bit worse near the last 25% of it or so of L's storyline too. Like, it runs out of steam a little bit. When you go back to it, you realize that the scene where Misa's going to kill L and then the amnesia storyline happens is just after the halfway point of L's storyline. So it's like that the part that goes on after that's actually like shockingly long, and it goes on for probably longer than it should have. I think in a perfect world,
the amnesia scene went on for way too long.
Yeah. So I think in a perfect world, the Death Note anime is like a 20-episode anime that ends with L's death, but also has like 5 episodes of filler trimmed out of it. But it's decently up there. It's a pretty fun show to go through.
Yeah, I think it's one of those shows. It's whether or not you like the type of genre, it's just worth it to see how character development works on that level.
Yeah,
they do a pretty good job of developing characters, and they're characters that you can distinctly tell from each other. They're not characters that you go like, who's that L guy again? It's kind of hard to remember. You know, who's Misa? Some of the people inside of the police, inside of the anti-Kira force, are a little bit harder to recognize, because a lot of them are just very, they all blend in together because they all just share the same ideals. Where they're all just like, yeah, we all hate Kira.
Yeah, they have a thing where like, each of them becomes more pronounced as a personality and more recognizable as the numbers dwindle.
Yeah,
it's like you slowly keep losing members of the police force, which gives the remaining people more and more screen time as it goes on. But they do essentially amount to being like a series of foot soldiers for L, so that he has actual resources to work with. But
pretty much
now I think it's time to get to what we're here to talk about, though, which is Netflix's Death Note live-action American adaptation of this anime.
Oh yeah, that's what we were here for.
Boy,
I forgot. I was having so much fun talking about a good series.
It takes place in Seattle. You can tell that because the first shot of the entire movie is the Space Needle.
God, I'm so tired of shit taking place in Seattle, man. Like,
I wonder if it's filmed in Seattle or not, because almost nothing's ever filmed where they say it is, and I just wonder if they just like, here's the Space Needle. All right, back to Georgia where everything's actually filmed or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually filmed in Seattle, but I do know that Seattle's not a really great place to do this. Like, this would be something you should probably do, like, I don't know, New York City or somewhere, or like Detroit. Detroit would be a great place to do this. Somewhere with like really high crime rates, so it kind of makes sense on the impact that Kira has.
I do wonder how Seattle's crime rates are.
I don't think they're high. I mean, there's a lot of Starbucks in Seattle.
That's your metric for inverse relationship with crime rates?
I mean, in relative, you know, what? So
I feel like the two go-to places would either be Chicago for sheer crime rate, or go to New York for population. Like just to have a huge crowd to hide in.
So let's see. Yeah, I mean, maybe. It doesn't look like Seattle has pretty bad crime, actually. It's a pretty reasonable place to live.
Let's talk about how this movie starts, though. So like he gets the Death Note because it falls out of the sky, because that's
okay.
The setup.
So first off, we meet two characters instantly, which is L and Misa. Or Mia.
I think she's Mia now. Yeah.
Yeah, she's Mia. The S was too Japanese. We had to drop it. No American girls named Misa.
Oh wait, did you say L or Light?
Sorry, I said L. I meant Light.
Yeah.
We're introduced to Light.
Misa, too weird of a name. Even though we're gonna go with Light and Kira still.
But remember, Keith, it's not Light Yagami. It's Light Smith. Or what was it?
I don't remember. He has some random like whitewashy last name they just threw in there.
I think it was Light. I think it was like Light White. Is that what it was?
It was not Light White. That'd be like Light Bright. They did not name him that. No, it's
think,
just a
what
very.
Was it?
It's a throwaway name that shows up like twice in the entire movie. I think I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
But no, he's just. I think it started with an S, maybe.
Yeah, maybe it was Smith. I don't know. I just remember it was like Light, and then some generic ass American last name, and I was like, why would you name your kid Light? Turner. There you go. Light Turner.
He's the Turner of Light. Because he's turning the world or something. Maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe.
What? Why did you name your child Light?
Maybe that's why Turner is a verb.
Was like the mom Japanese? Like,
they never really. I don't think they ever acknowledged why his name is Light. And nobody. I don't think anyone ever acknowledges that his name being Light is weird. Like I think that's just thrown. That's just kind of ignored the entire film.
It's just expected. Like Light's a normal name, but L guy is weird. He doesn't have a name. What?
But not much happens early on besides the fact that he gets punched up by some bully just to introduce a bully character. But the important difference here that happens early on is just how the Death Note and Ryuk are introduced.
I was right though, by the way. We had a discussion when we were doing a recording session. We watched one of the trailers, and the moment the trailer opens, it shows that nerd guy fall to the ground, and then someone mugs him. And I was like, did he just literally fall over and someone just mugged him? And that was like what happened.
It's really rapidly edited in a confusing way.
Yeah,
but it totally looks like
people
are running through the wind, and he just eats shit, and then people are like, "I'm gonna take your shit while you're on the ground."
That's what I thought happened. I was like, "Wait, did they just mug a guy who tripped in the rain?" Like that's really brutal.
Yeah. It's hard to tell because they're right next to a door and he shoots out in a weird direction, so it almost seems like conveniently two bullies and a nerd came through a double door and he got thrown out in the rain and they were robbed of shit while the entire basketball audience was also running in that hallway in the other direction, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was hilarious.
There's no Asian guy ahead of him when he's running. I just cut back to it, and because it's Netflix, so we can just like look at it right now. Yeah, he comes bursting out of a door. So, like the bullies just conveniently mug this guy in the rain right in front of the group as they're all running away because they're like, "Oh, game's canceled because it's raining super hard."
Oh, he does just fall out of the door, and
it's a somewhat strange scene.
What a weird. Also, that doesn't. What a weird... Yeah, he just, like, straight... So, Light's not even by himself, by the way. There's still people running behind him as this happens. And people watch this...
Just no one else cares?
Yeah, people just watch this guy fly out of double doors. No teachers, apparently. And...
He's a very much like old school like 80s movie bully that somehow has magical powers to get away with being a douchebag in society. Where
they even do the thing where it's two bullies together, so they do like the Power Rangers thing where it's like, hey, yeah, you get him, fat guy.
Yeah, bulk.
Yeah. Like they even do this shitty ass double like the straight man funny man like bully system, like just such a generic piece of shit.
Yeah, and so then he gets. It turns out, so he gets knocked the fuck out, and it turns out that he was doing other people's homework, basically. And so that's cheating. So he goes to the principal's office, and they're like, we're going to give you detention, and we might expel you. This is really serious. Never comes up again. It's like, it sounds like it's setting up like, wow, he's going to have to balance something, or he's going to get expelled from school, and that would be bad, but it just never goes anywhere.
Well, no, he gets detention.
Yeah, it seems to be that the only reason to do any of this was just so that the Ryuk scene could happen in detention, which doesn't serve a purpose for the story either.
It actually does serve nothing. No.
Like, there's no reason for the Ryuk scene to happen in detention. It happens in his house in the original anime, and there's no real reason to change that.
Does it happen in... Yeah, it does happen in his house.
Yeah, he originally just shows up in his house like, ooh, you used the Death Note. Here's what's going to happen to you now.
Right, because in the anime, he goes to like a convenience store, and then some dude is being a piece of shit, and so he like writes every different type of because he like knows only the guy's name like very vaguely, so he just writes every different iteration of that guy's name in the Death Note, and then the guy dies.
That was a great difference between the two. Is that in the Light Yagami or Yagami crap? Light Yagami wants to just...
Megumi, Magoo, Ugugu, Light Ugugu.
Anime Light wants to experiment with this thing, and he's like, yeah, totally, I'd get rid of shitty people. He sees some biker gang guy harassing a lady in the street, and he hears like one of his lackeys say his name, so he goes in the convenience store and acts like he's looking at magazines, but he's actually writing in the death note, and he just writes every variation of spelling of that guy's name that he can think of while picturing his name, just to see if he'll die, and then he dies in a horrible accident like a second later.
And then he just runs home, doesn't he? He just kind of like,
he's like, oh my god, this is real, and he's like, oh, and like, this changes everything, and like he basically like in anime editing magic, he basically just teleports home. He's like, I can become God and stuff like that, and then that's when Ryuk shows up to actually explain some things and the way that he's kind of doomed himself, and then he becomes a character that's just along for the ride to watch for his own entertainment from there on out.
Yeah, but that's and it makes sense because it's because that's like the whole point, isn't it? That until you use the Death Note,
the important difference here,
there's no reason for Ryuk to be there, because if you don't do anything with it, then he'll just take it back.
This is where we get to a really important difference between these two versions, and it seems to be an East versus West idea of how demons work.
Yeah, you were absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I called it immediately when we looked at the trailer, because I was like, in Japan, demons just rule over various parts of nature and society, and they kind of just are keepers of the existence of those concepts, and they're actually kind of passive a lot of the time.
Yeah, and like so demons are just the opposite of light, but their inherent existence isn't there to make humanity better or worse. They're just there to enjoy life. They're just there to like be either like devils who go around and get drunk all the time and like cause shit, or they're angels who just don't do that.
So Ryuk is mischievous, but he's not like the devil, and he's not like Loki where he's actively creating stuff. He just throws his fun notebook nightmare device into society and then just watches and generally doesn't interfere.
Yeah, the notion is that humans are more by their nature more dangerous than demons are.
Yeah, he basically gives Ryuk, Light the rope, and Light does everything to himself throughout the show, more or less.
That was like the whole point, is that Ryuk did literally nothing. Ryuk did nothing wrong. He just threw down a book.
Ryuk did nothing wrong.
He didn't. He did not do anything wrong. He just threw a book down, and some crazy kid was like, I'm going to kill everyone. And Ryuk's like, that's one way to do it, I guess.
What quickly becomes an important distinction is that in this version, the Netflix version, the American version, Ryuk is the devil, basically.
Yeah,
the Shinigami as a concept don't exist. There's no mention of the idea of there being anyone besides Ryuk.
Well, they call him a death god.
Yeah. They do
call him a death god.
I think they basically just call him the death god at that point. Like, at the very least, there's no inference of there being other ones.
Yeah.
And he explicitly is like, ooh, yes, this is a dream. You're seeing me because this is a dream. Why don't you go kill that dude? Like, he's like, why don't you write his name and see what happens? Like, he basically, like, suggests and tricks Light into using the Death Note. And, like, it compromises the agency of the character they're adapting in a frustrating way, while changing the character. Like, it changes Ryuk to a point where he's unrecognizable. So generally, Ryuk that you know from the anime is not really in this, and the only real upside is that he's voiced by Willem Dafoe, which is great.
Yeah, it's just William Dafoe making a really scary voice.
Yeah, which unfortunately it's not always a great performance either. Like the voice is right, but there's moments where Willem Dafoe is like, oh shit, I gotta say like a bunch of instructions in 10 seconds. So he has like 3 scenes where he says a series of rules or instructions way too quickly and way too like without any pauses or anything, in a really forced like automatic dialogue feel.
Yeah,
which one of them happens right there in that scene. He's like, where he's talking about the idea of like, oh yeah, if this is too much for you, like you leave the notebook somewhere else for 7 days, and I'll find somebody else. And he sounds like when you go to Best Buy and the cashier talks about how if you fill out the customer survey, you can win a $10,000 shopping spree. Like, it's just a forced automatic weird dialogue that they just had to force in there. It almost would sound ADR'd if it wasn't lip synced and everything like that. Although I guess
I don't
CG
think
character voice acting is ADR.
I always wonder too, like, I guess they did use a suit for Ryuk in the movie.
I assume somebody was there in the room.
Yeah, but they never fucking show him.
Yeah, frustratingly, he's in shadows the entire movie.
He's in shadows the entire movie, and there are sometimes you get a teensy little look at his face, and it looks terrible.
Yeah, because he's really cheap, like Netflix CGI, so they have to keep him in the shadows so that he can hide most of his body.
Yeah, and I was like, oh.
Because otherwise he won't work out. Whereas Ryuk was always like in full light and floating around, and he had a big like white face, and he was like very clearly articulated at all times in the anime because there was no reason to hide him. In this one, he's used super sparingly. He's missing for like 80% of the film, which is strange because of how ever-present he is in the anime, but it's because he costs money to animate, and whenever he shows up, he's always in the dark, and he's always in the corner, and he's always just there to say like 3 things, then disappear again. Yeah. So he quickly becomes like an underutilized character.
I mean, I think more than 50% of his lines is just like, can you give up the Notebook? Just stop doing the Notebook. I want someone else to have the Notebook.
He says like 3 times, that Light can just give up and stop.
And he like one time he says, "Could you please do that?" He like asks Light to just give it up because he's tired. He's like bored with Light.
There's moments where he's like, "You just kind of suck. Can you just give up the Notebook?" And
he's like, "I like this girl. Give it to the girl." And it's like, what the fuck, dude? I don't like. I don't understand what's going on.
It seems weird, but part of it almost makes sense just because in this one they've never established the damnation part of using the book.
Yeah,
it seems that using the Death Note in this universe has no consequences. Whereas you are ruining yourself forever if you use it in the anime. Like, you are dooming yourself if you use it.
In this one, the worst thing that happens is, like, you might get caught.
If you're stupid about it.
Yeah, that's it. That's, like, the only inherent risk is, like, you might get caught, and you gotta have this, like, really annoying demon follow you around.
And
like,
speaking of you might get caught, this Light makes a very stupid decision, because the second person he kills is someone directly tied to his past.
Yeah, it's literally somebody at his school.
First he gets somebody killed at his school, but then he kills somebody who killed his mom. It's like,
oh, you mean the second time you wrote the second murder.
He does a 1-2. He does like a 1-2 of back to back, like getting himself in trouble. Then he calls himself Kira, which he explains in 2 different languages translates to the name Light. It's like, God damn it. And he's like, no, it also kind of means killer in Japanese, so we can trick people into thinking I'm Japanese. But I'm like, also, it also translates to your name, you idiot.
I was like, okay, the reason that it's like, when you use Kira in the anime, it makes sense, because it's just, like you said, it does kind of just loosely translate to murder.
It's a Japanese language anime, so the idea that it loosely translates to killer being as far as the name's thought goes makes sense. And the anime at least never openly acknowledges the idea that it translates to literally being light in other languages.
No, it doesn't. So like, that's stupid.
So like that could be like one of those Batman, Superman, they're both named Martha, like funny coincidences when you think about it in a greater context. But in the context of this show, they actively acknowledge that his pseudonym translates back to his name, which is an insane idea when you're going to become the biggest killer in the history of the world.
It's also insane when you think about what your name is and where you live. How many fucking Lights live in Seattle? Like,
it quickly. Oh yeah, right.
Could you just run a fucking database and go like, how many Lights are there in the United States? Children named literally Light. How many are there? Let's narrow that down.
It quickly becomes a thing where like, it just becomes apparent the protagonist is an idiot, and like he could never maintain this whole facade nearly as long as the character he's based on did for an entire show.
God, no. He couldn't even keep up this persona for less than 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that people figure out that I'm pretty sure Elle figures out that it might be him within 10 minutes of showing up in the movie.
Well, he does. That's why he has the dad. That's why he contacts the dad, because he immediately assumes that the dad's son is Kira.
Like immediately, because he just draws a line to himself in the most brutal way.
And it's like, the other thing, too, is immediately after killing the guy that he was related to, the mob guy, I guess. I don't even really fucking know what this guy is.
Somebody who vaguely killed his mother, and he gets no detail or characterization beyond that point, that he just either killed his mom or was responsible for his mom's death or something. And it's weirdly undeveloped.
It's also weird because they act like he went to court, but he got away with it. And it's like, how though. Like if you guys are convinced he killed her, then why didn't that convince a jury? And if not, like
I can buy that much just because it's at the very least it's just a really common trope in movies.
Yeah,
the idea of killers getting off the hook, but somehow the evidence is also so strong that everyone knows that they killed him. Which I mean, like OJ situations, sure.
Yeah, but the second part of that is when you see him, he's literally just eating dinner. He is doing no criminal activity to show that he is a continual murderer. He's not someone going out in the streets killing people for the funs of it. He's just a dude.
He's basically in the middle of the equivalent of like, well, we'll have this guy eat an asshole to eat an asshole. We'll have this guy eat an apple to just so you know he's an asshole. Like he's just eating and laughing at an expensive restaurant just so you don't like him by default. I guess.
Am I supposed to like him because he's enjoying some nice looking Italian food at a restaurant?
He doesn't have a line of dialogue in the movie,
which is awkward. He just goes like,
But just to rewind to the first kill, besides the difference in portrayal of Ryuk, there's two issues that come up here, which is one, this is a really minor thing, but the Ryuk's arrival is way overblown because in the anime he just shows up and he's like for a chunk of the anime you even think he might just be a ghost, like until he starts eating apples you don't know he can touch stuff even. But in the movie, he like demolishes the room. Like the guy's in the detention, and it's in some kind of weird detention room that has way too many shelves and glass and confetti. I guess
the detention room is just the art classroom.
It seems to be the fun craft room.
Yeah, I guess Seattle schools are really underfunded. They don't even have like a separate classroom for detention. They just have to put them in some arts and crafts room.
The room's full of glass jars, which is already a mistake in a school.
Why are they glass?
Confetti and colorful paper
ones.
and like pipe cleaners and stuff, like just everything colorful, so that when Ryuk leaves, the room can just explode into a wind tornado and the entire room's full of debris. And what's weird is that the show it almost feels like there was a story arc that got scrapped, like deleted scenes. Because he gets a scene with the principal for the cheating with the homework stuff, like how he was helping a bunch of people cheat. And then this scene happens where his entire detention room is demolished. And instead of getting in trouble with it, you never see any school faculty ever again. And he just leaves and it never comes up again.
That is so weird. That was the first thing I thought when I was watching it. And like he's like, okay, I'm going to leave now. And the scene ends. I was like, man, is he going to get fucking like in super trouble for just wrecking an entire classroom? Never talk about it again.
Like I feel like this isn't even like nitpicking and we're not crazy. I feel like the entire audience watching the movie will be like, "Oh, he's fucked" when you see that scene, and then it never comes up again. You're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, I was like, "How did this thing like he?" And it's not just. And again, we're not saying this in for people who haven't seen it. We're not saying it in the sense of, oh, like papers were thrown around. Literally everything in this room was thrashed. Desks
the entire floor is covered in debris. Like, it looks like a Silent Hill room almost, without the blood.
Basically, it looks like an abandoned facility after like somebody tried to pillage it for goods. Like someone was looting in this classroom.
Especially since, like, when the detention lady leaves, she's like, I'm gonna go for a little bit. Listen, don't fall asleep. It'll add some days to your sentence, basically, is what she says. And then that happens. I'm like, he's fucked. He's gonna be in detention for the rest of the year. And it never comes up again.
Which, I'll be honest with you, Keith, that actually would have been a really good setup, because he would have sat there in detention killing people.
Writing people's names constantly while watching the news.
And that would have been really interesting. Because they could have had the teacher sitting there being a terrible teacher watching like the news in the classroom. Yeah. And then he's sitting there just writing people's names.
You just watch TV in detention anyway half the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, what? Why did you have this scene? Because like Ryuk shows up, all he does is convince him to kill a dude and then just walks away after thrashing a room. All it does is show Light's like a super coward where like he sees Ryuk and then just screams for about a solid minute. And like, I don't know why.
What happens is it's a failure of the rule of threes, basically. Like, have you seen that video Elling sometimes where it's folding ideas talking about Suicide Squad?
Yes.
It's like there's a very specific thing in Suicide Squad where Captain Boomerang, they set up the idea that he has a stuffed pink unicorn for some reason. They talk about it once, and they show it again. Like, oh, look at it. It's there in his jacket pocket. Look at that. Like, look at that. Remember that pink unicorn? And then later in the movie, he gets stabbed right there through his jacket. And then he opens his jacket, and the money and the knife is stabbed into money instead of the pink unicorn. And it's like, why did you set up the pink unicorn then if you're not going to actually pay off that setup? Like, you set it up twice, and then it doesn't come up again. And like, that's the equivalent of that. It's like first he falls over and, oh, look at the papers in the rain. And then the next scene is, oh, look at this scene where the principal's like, this is your last straw, mister. And then look at this next scene about him being in detention and how he's like, if you do anything wrong, you're going to get more in trouble. And then the movie just drops it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, like, it's only nitpicking if you don't care and you don't respect movies enough to think that they're going to follow through with the ideas they set up. But if you're paying any attention to films, like, this is what you're going to, like, this is how films are made. This is kind of basic stuff. So the movie doesn't seem incompetently made on a technical level. It seems to just have really bad scripting problems mostly, and a really
I think it's just written on
really
a bad level.
main actor choice. I think
the acting choices were really subpar in this as well.
It's like my best guess is deleted scene. Is that some scene got deleted, or they had to make it on some sort of schedule, so they like had it in the script at one point, but then they changed the script, but it was too late because they already like had filmed part of the film or something like that.
That's actually kind of a disappointing. That's a disappointing thing about Netflix movies, is that they don't get a box release, so you never get to see deleted scenes. You don't know if there's any like behind the what actually was cut out or anything. Do they ever do that?
If they do it right, it might be... I've seen specific situations where deleted scenes and featurettes are like added to a show, but I think deleted scenes and bloopers and featurettes are only on shows, unfortunately. Because like Orange is the New Black is a show that gets a lot of like bonus episodes that are like interviews with the cast and stuff like that after the show's over.
Okay.
But I don't think I've seen that specifically in the movies on Netflix.
They don't have... I was wondering if they had an option for director commentary.
Yeah, I've been looking for like menus and stuff.
Yeah, I would love to see something. Is there something wrong? Tell us. Yes, there is something wrong.
There's mainly just movie. They do have 5 languages.
I don't want it in 5 languages. I want the director's commentary. I want to hear the director talk about why he included this scene.
Yeah,
like I feel I would love
to learn about this movie and what happened with it a little bit.
Yeah. It's one of the few times where I'm like, I actually want to know genuinely how you fucked this up. Like, what was going through your head when you did stuff. But, okay, so he kills the dude. It turns into, like, a Final Destination movie for a quick second.
That's the other detail I was going to get to, is that on top of the weird, like, not following through with the rule of threes and the detention, is that they set up immediately with this kill, the first kill of the movie, that if you write somebody's name... And, like, even if you write decapitation, stuff like that, like, it sets up, like, an incredibly contrived, like, really cinematic, like, Final Destination kill.
Machine.
Yeah. Like, this guy falls over here, and that guy stumbles, and that guy stumbles, and that knocks over that thing, and those dominoes lead to that car getting distracted, and then that truck perfectly has a ladder on top of it, which decapitates the dude, which I'm slightly like, I don't know if that can happen. That might be like, oh shit, my nose is broken, as opposed to your...
No, I think it would have just... I don't think it would decapitate you, I think it would snap your neck. I don't think it would actually take your head clean off. I think it would just, like, snap your neck and probably...
I wonder about the physics there, because they're driving in a residential zone around a school and not particularly fast. And they
By the way, a school zone is 15 miles an hour. It's supposed to be, I think.
Yeah, they're driving in low speeds, and he just hits the brakes because those last second, like, oh, I might hit that guy. And... They clearly weren't going that fast, because I think they were actually able to stop fast enough to not even hit the car that they almost hit. So like they weren't.
He swerved out of the way and then ran into a.
So what happens is a ladder on top of it unfolds forward, because one of those metal ladders that doubles in length by sliding, and despite only going probably 15 to 25 miles per hour. And then hitting the brakes, then you lose all of the potential energy, and like you're via friction and horizontal momentum, you're losing a bunch of energy just by unfolding the ladder in the first place. Then it collides with the guy's face, and it decapitates him, not just by cutting like his head off, but like it actually decapitates him through the mouth. Like
his head explodes off of him.
Yeah, his head cuts in half and explodes from getting hit by a metal ladder at maybe 15 miles or less per hour. I'm like, I don't know about that. This is like maybe punch strength, I feel like. So like that's weird, but I'm not really as concerned about the logistics of the death as I am just the fact that the show immediately turns into like whenever somebody dies, they have to get killed by a crazy scenario as opposed to just having a heart attack or something.
I also didn't like that it had to be so graphic about it.
Oh yeah,
the deaths it takes like away from it.
Heavy
like
gore.
It's like I don't give a shit about the gore. That's not the point of Death Note. It's not about like how disgusting can this death be. It's like that what? No, it's about the story, guys.
There's also a strong inconsistency here because these first two deaths are Rube Goldberg machines and there's like a heavy gore element and blood spraying all over other people's faces and like really graphic deaths and really contrived scenarios for the deaths. And they basically go away.
They come back
like later in the film people
times?
Film people jump off a roof and somebody dies of a heart attack eventually.
You see the people jumping off the roof. You like see their bodies splat
jumping
on the
off the roof does have the gore element, but they get rid of the Rube Goldberg concept, the Final Destination part.
There's still the Rube Goldberg concept, to a degree.
They're just walking. All they do is jump off a cliff, and then somebody else dies of a heart attack, and somebody else gets shot, and like people keep dying and really. Like they throw away the contrived, really complicated deaths almost immediately, as far as I can tell. I can't think of a single
wasn't the
death.
Suicide like the most convoluted death of all of them? Because wasn't it literally that Mia had written the name down of one guy and had that guy write down the other people's names inside of the Death Note, and that they would all suicide with each other?
So that's not the Final Destination part, though. Final Destination and Rube Goldberg means like a crazy physics, ridiculous, contrived thing happens.
Yeah, I just meant like that's still like a really ridiculous like setup where you're like, I'm hoping that this guy will write down all the people that I need into the notebook.
That part's normal. That part's actually from the source material.
The writing down everybody's name into the Death Note?
Yeah. There's a part where Light's being investigated, and he uses the Death Note to have that guy write down all of his coworkers into another Death Note. It's like that's from the source material, and that's not as contrived. That's just being clever within the rules that you have.
But did he? But I thought when he wrote down those people's names into the Death Note, it just gave them heart attacks.
So like that's the difference. There is that the scenario of the death changes.
It was really crazy.
My point is to say that the movie sets up that this is how deaths are going to happen, then never does it again.
Oh yeah,
they set up Final Destination deaths, and then as if that's what the movie's going to be about, and then they throw them away for the entire film until maybe the Ferris wheel at the very end.
Really? Did the Ferris wheel have any gore?
I'm not saying gore. I'm just saying the contrivedness. Like they're setting up that's how deaths are going to work in this film. And then they throw them away.
Yeah, that was so the
like
last
the movie,
one.
It's like the movie's trying to hook you in by pretending to be Final Destination for a bit, and like, wow, how exciting are the deaths going to be? And then they're never exciting ever again.
Yeah.
And in fact, the gore also goes away. So even if you were there for gore, that goes away pretty quickly. Because by the time they're killing Watari, he closes his eyes, and it's a reverse shot, and then a flash of white, and he dies off camera.
Yeah, he dies off camera by cops or whatever.
It's like before long, the death stopped being gory. Even the love interest character dies by falling into a cloud of flowers, and then she just has a little bit of blood.
Yeah,
like on her nose, and then that's her death.
She's too hot to make her head explode. All right, you can't do that. The vital character to the story.
These inconsistencies are important because they highlight what might be an ongoing problem with Netflix with these like low budget, like highly scheduled film releases, because it really plagued the Defenders. Because I just did a spoiler cast of that like last week, and like Jessica Jones and Daredevil start off at a really high point, and then the other shows get progressively worse to the point where Iron Fist famously they were like telling them the choreography for each fight scene like on set that day, like right before filming the scene, and that's how like rushed the whole show was, even though it's a kung fu show. Like that's how bad it was.
It's not how
Defenders is equally like rushed, and like that shows here a little bit where they have like that you can see setups for storylines and feel that the show is gonna have, and then just dumps for Death Note, because like here's how deaths are going to work. JK, here, and oh wow, he's going to have to deal with this detention storyline. JK, we just dump it and forget about it and it goes away.
Yeah, there is like a feeling that they were taking pieces. They were taking little bits and pieces of certain things that were written for the plot. It's almost as if someone wrote multiple different stories for Death Note and they kind of just like cut around parts that they liked and included those ones into one final script.
It almost feels like they were intentionally trying to have, like, push for a shorter duration because it's a weirdly short movie.
It is, yeah. It is only like it's an hour 30.
Yeah.
So it's an hour 30.
That's an important distinction too, because it says an hour 40, but there's a lot of credits in this film.
Yeah,
it has one of those. It has one of those stylized credit sequences that goes on for a while before it plays the real credit sequence, which in itself is also long. So like,
the credit sequence
it is
goes
very much
from,
an hour 30.
The credit sequence is literally 10 minutes long.
It's an hour 30, and it has 2 slow motion music sequences, just to pad for more length. Like, it's a weirdly, like, they cut so much out of it at some point. And so, like, you're taking a 37 episode series and adapting it into a 90-minute movie.
You're taking like 24 episodes and turning it into an hour 30 movie.
They're kind of doing the storyline, but they're also taking ideas from the final arc of Death Note. But they're also going into, like, there's an inherent problem which is that the Death Note itself, while having a decent number of rules for a TV show, has way too many rules for a movie. And the movie kind of goes into self-parody because they add even more rules on top of that.
Yeah, they added like 60, I think it was like 67. It was one of the numbers I saw when he's turning the pages.
They say 90 something at one point. They say those 90 plus rules at one point.
90 plus rules.
So we can assume this Death Note has somewhere vaguely in the ballpark of 100 rules, which basically gives them like really bad writing, like free pass, because whenever they want a plot point to happen, they can make up a new Death Note rule on the spot.
Burning of the page,
which they do over and over again, despite the fact the movie is only 90 minutes long. They couldn't come up with a consistent, tight storyline with a specific number of rules just for a 90-minute film. Like, this movie, if anything, you need to simplify the Death Note, not expand on it, but they keep expanding on it more and more to the point where it gives them the ability to do anything they want to with the plot. Which quickly becomes a problem because eventually the Death Note just becomes a mind control device, which means they can write down anyone's name and make anybody do anything they want to at any point. And so for half the movie, the protagonist is just mind controlling people, like just explicitly, like for days on end, they just become brain slaves. And the only stipulation is they have to die at the end, and that's it. And like, that's not like, but they can go on for days as a slave, and like that's. One of the strengths of the original show was that if Light wanted to accomplish anything that was too convoluted or complicated for him to do single-handedly, he had to manipulate people into like accidentally assisting him, or he had to find people that were so devout to what he was accomplishing and then potentially reveal himself to them so that he could then like try to create these convoluted plans with other people.
Yeah.
In the movie, he can just invent. The movie can basically just make up some killer that you've never heard of before, and it can retroactively reveal that guy has been doing stuff behind the scenes for the last 5 days because Light mind controlled him days ago to do this stuff. And so, like, whenever there's a plot twist, it usually involves, like, several days ago, this incredibly convoluted thing was written in the notebook, and that's been happening in the background, and it has infinite power, basically.
Yeah. Well, okay, and so here's the thing to take a note about, is that, because I'm sure you'll have commenters who get really mad at you, the original Death Note from the manga does in fact have like 66 or so rules that exist. But the rules are very not rules. They're just conditions, if you want to put it more specifically. They're not rules, they're more of like conditional
they're
statements.
Like qualifications about things.
So one would be even though only one name is written in the Death Note, if it influences and causes other humans that are not written in it to die, the victim's cause of death will be a heart attack. That's just a rule, but that's not really a rule. That's more of just a.
It's like a clarification of a subcategory of a specific thing, as opposed to having like 500 new additional powers.
So
like one of the rules is basically that the Death Note can't make people like reveal things they don't know.
Yeah, And yeah, like a human death caused by Death Note will indirectly lengthen some other human's original life, even without a specific intention to lengthen a particular person's lifespan in the human world. Yeah, because if you kill somebody, then that person that was actually going to kill another person doesn't exist anymore, so that person gets to live longer. But you don't know who it is, and you don't have any control over it.
Also, so it's like, here's a fun, important detail. Light in the anime reads the rules. Light in the movie just kind of doesn't read the rules and keeps getting surprised by them like some kind of asshole. Like, he's sitting here like, I'm going to reshape the entire world. And he's not going to even bother, like, reading the rules to his own Death Note.
Because here's the thing is that what's established very, very quickly is that Light in the movie
is an idiot.
No, he is book smart. So he's really good at math, and that's it. Because that's the only thing we've ever seen him do, is he's done math homework for other people and gets paid for it. And that's it. We never see him do another thing in class again. But that's the extent of his intelligence. We don't actually know what his grades are. We have no idea. We never see him studying. We never see him doing anything besides that one time he did math in the courtyard.
Which was a plot device for him to go into detention, which is an entire dropped plot thread that goes nowhere.
It's the only reason we know he's good at math is for no reason at all. And so it cracks me up for two reasons. One, because it makes Light just a complete idiot, and it justifies why he's a complete idiot. Is because and
it justifies why he's going to be dead in 90 minutes, or why he's going to lose that fast.
And two, L's also an utter complete idiot, because the first thing L says is that, like, oh, Light's pretty smart.
So here's an important detail to bring up. This is a 90-minute movie, and I can check. L shows up 30 minutes into this 90-minute movie.
Yeah, he does. He shows like 30 minutes, shows up 30 minutes later.
So 30 minutes into the film, after Kira's killed hundreds of people, and there are cults worshipping him, and he's had the creepiest sex scene where he seems to imply that he's having sex with Mia, and the symbolism for him climaxing is a Korean fascist's head exploding. I'm like, that's a weird symbol for climaxing sexually. That's what the fuck.
Wait, where is that? What scene is that?
There's a part where he's rolling in the bed with Mia, and it seems to suggest sex because in the middle of it, it cuts to the Korean guy's head exploding, then back to them rolling in bed. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I don't even remember
What are you suggesting
Holy
here?
Holy shit.
Because it's really a weird visual.
Oh my god, I missed that entire visual. That's amazing. What the fuck?
Oh my god, I just noticed an Easter egg.
What's that?
So when it establishes L, two Japanese clans have wiped each other out at some stripper club, and they said the Nakamuras. The guy says that the Nakamuras have had a feud for decades or something like that, and the guy that says that is the guy that plays Hiro Nakamura in Heroes.
Oh,
I recognized him, but I didn't notice that. Like, oh, he literally calls them the Nakamuras. Like, they name the family that they named the Japanese Yakuza clan or whatever after the character that the actor's playing in the background that they had for an afternoon, I guess, because that's his only line. It's weird. They're bringing Hiro Nakamura from Heroes, and he's in one scene, so you can be like, oh, the Nakamuras have been fighting for decades. Weird. Then he leaves the movie.
The Nakamuras are bad people.
So this scene is like the first 2 minutes of L being in the movie are where he does all the clever things, basically, and then he never does them again. Which is that first of all, this is a murder that happens in Japan. All these dead people wiped out in a stripper club. The entire reason they were all killed was because L fed these criminals' names into a system in the police system. So and it was not broadcast on the news, which meant that if Kira killed them, then he was tied to the police. And so that's the important first step, and like that's one of the handful of things. Then he basically repeats the steps of what a few people do during the of what L does in the anime, of like narrowing them down to a specific location based on the kill patterns and who he's gone after and stuff like that. Like that all directly.
Yeah, he immediately basically assumes like, yeah, he's in Seattle.
Yeah,
it's like, oh. Okay.
The part where he gets to Seattle is a montage that explains how smart he is, and then he kind of doesn't act smart for the rest of the movie, and there basically aren't clever showdowns between L and Light, which is the entire draw of the source material.
The most clever showdown that exists is in the coffee shop.
It's like barely even a showdown.
No, L just shows up and goes like, "I think you're Kira," and Light's just like, "Nuh-uh," and then that's
like,
it.
"Why haven't you rescued me then?" It's like, I don't do soft check. I only do checkmate. And it's like they're just like,
yeah.
There's almost no really like baiting for information or clever stuff happening. It's just like they're just talking shit at each other, basically.
It's just L. Actually, it just makes L look like a narcissist as well.
And also,
he just shows up for no reason and says like, "You're the bad guy," and it's like, "Are you gonna arrest me then?" And he's like, "I have no proof." What? And
there's a really dumb line where Light makes himself seem even stupider by being like, "All you talk about is Kira." I'm like, is this real dialogue? Like, you're gonna say Kira? Like, that's like, what is happening right now?
It's a good song. Kira.
It's a strange moment. But also, the showdown between them in the coffee shop is when L has been in the movie for 20 minutes.
I think my favorite line, though, of, like, weird, awkward dialogue is when L first shows up, and he goes onto TV dressed as a terrorist. And he's doing the speech to the news people, and fucking Light comes downstairs. His dad's having dinner, and he goes, "So that's a weird guy on the TV. You happen to know his name?" Like, what? What an odd question! What a very specifically odd question to ask, son. Like, because he comes.
That's one of the frustrating things about how they deal with the character is that they completely skip one of the really fun plot points of the anime, which is that L uses a body double, and when that guy gets killed, he then reveals, "You fell for my trap. I'm only broadcasting this special in this neighborhood, so now I know kind of where you live." And then Light is like, "Fuck."
Yeah, Light gets really upset about it in the anime.
Yeah,
he's like, "God, fucking damn it!"
Because it's a really clever trick to narrow down where the person lives. Instead, they don't do it, and they replace it with L wearing a mask on television and a hoodie and yelling at Kira. And it's like, no, this is. First of all, like, you'll forget this scene even existed before long, but it's like, whereas it was one of the most memorable scenes of the entire anime, was like how clever of a trick that was to narrow down where Kira was, and there's no reason to cut it out, because using that to narrow down where Kira was would be good for the movie too.
Well, they use, which is super weird, is that instead of doing that exact trick, which I feel like, again, this feels like a fan film. Like, they didn't get the rights to do Death Note stuff.
So they had to change all the recognizable scenes?
Yeah, they had to change all, like, the really iconic scenes and be like, well, we can't legally make it the exact same as the manga, so we'll just kind of tweak it a little bit. But they had the scene where the guy kills himself by saluting and standing in the middle of the road, and a police guy runs him over. Like, that was only broadcasted in Seattle, so apparently that has to have been... like, L's assumption for why Kira's in Seattle was because that murder occurred. It was only aired in Seattle, and because he wasn't on drugs or drunk when he did that, which is like not the best example ever, because you could be like, well, maybe he's mentally ill, and it's like, well, we can't prove that, so no, don't talk about it. Just, he wasn't on drugs, he wasn't drunk. So he wouldn't have stood there, saluted, and got hit by a car after just kidnapping his family and holding them hostage.
Somehow I feel like that would be broadcasted further than just Seattle, too.
It would, yeah. It would have.
A hostage situation at gunpoint probably wouldn't only be broadcasted in one city. Like,
well,
the hostage...
You know what they fucked up on, though, Keith?
What? Mr. Close to the Microphone Man.
Because they... Oh my god, I love it. Because they showed the way that Kira, or the way that Light killed this guy, which was to show Mia, hey, I can kill people whenever I want. Aren't I hot shit? You should fuck me. Was that he was watching a live stream on his computer.
Bwomp.
So it literally was shown to the entire fucking world.
It is on the computer. You're right. Unless it's like a local news station or something, but yeah, it is like really, it is iffy.
Even if it was local news station, what, did L track the IP address of the person that was watching and then look through the security camera of the laptop and then check somebody wrote down the name of somebody onto a death note? Like, how did you figure this out?
So it's worth noting that there is a hostage situation that does help him narrow down where Light is in the anime, but it was broadcasted in all of Japan.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the scale of that kind of stuff. Is like
which is why the scene where L does the body double makes so fucking much sense, is because he narrowed it down to which district in Japan it's located.
Yeah. That was the important thing, is you show a series of steps where he's getting closer and closer to finding out where Light is. Step 1, you find out that, this broadcast is only in Japan, so he must have been killing people. He must be from Japan or watching Japanese broadcasts. Step 2, set up this scheme that's really clever for going section by section to try to bait him into killing your body double so that you can then know what region he sits in. And then comes the part where you're like, and he's got private information with the police, so he must be tied with the police, and that's how he keeps getting closer and closer to Light. But in this one, they're like, we'll just skip to the end. That one guy, he was only being broadcasted on that guy's computer. It's him. They skip so many steps, but like that cat and mouse game's the interesting part of the source material, and they replaced that with chase scenes and stuff like that.
That's the whole point. That was the whole point of Death Note.
Yep.
It was literally the icon, taking that like Sherlock versus Moriarty situation.
Yep.
And just making a whole series out of it, because that's interesting. People love that. Like this,
it's a drama that focuses on the idea of, here's two characters in two specific scenarios with their own sets of rules. How would things play out?
Yeah, it's like fight, and then you enjoy that. But this movie wants to tell you a story that isn't really about the battle between L and Light. It's kind of a story about how cool a Death Note is. Like, let me tell you that a Death Note is a really cool device that can kill people. People can use it, but that's not important right now. What's important is that it has 60-something rules, and it's a lot of rules. And, but the movie never focuses on the people. Like, it never...
Instead, it's focused on fan service.
Yeah.
It's focused on despite having no time for character development, it has time for several scenes of Ryuk eating an apple.
No,
and despite the fact that it refuses to have L be L, it will constantly show you L eating sweets. Because that's the important part of L, right? Is that he eats candy?
Yeah.
And that's really not the important part of L. In fact, it's set up at one point in the show that the reason why L is just shoving calories down his face and why he sits weird is all because that's how it helps him think. And the constant calories he's just burning because he's so constantly running on all cylinders with his brain, trying to process all this stuff, that he's basically fueling himself constantly like a furnace.
Yeah, the excuse was that sugar's kind of like the sense of coffee, where I think he said he doesn't like coffee, and he said sugar is what helps him, it helps him feed his brain so he can keep having energy to keep going forward. Which they tried to hint at with Watari talking to L all the time, saying like, how long have you been awake? And he says like, exactly 31 hours. And it's like,
he reports exact amount of time.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm glad you're wasting time in your brain to keep track of that, but all right, and then that's it. Then Watari's just like, sleep is good. Please go to sleep.
Unfortunately, there's only like 2 conversations or like 2 scenes that really set up any kind of eccentricities with L. And then beyond then, he just becomes a crying, yelling man for most of the movie. And his biggest quirk is that he sits on his feet.
Just gets really emotional for no reason.
It's not for no reason, because Watari is hostage and everything, but it's just like
not the Watari thing, but like before
it gets
then,
character breaky in an awkward way. Even before then, he's yelling constantly.
Yeah, he like got super mad when the cops were dying, where he was like he threw the phone down and shit, and like was getting. And I was like, why are you getting mad about this? Like you're supposed to not give a shit. It's just you and Watari. Everyone else is just there. They're just kind of pawns. These are people you literally wouldn't show your face to. Why are you so upset about them dying? Like, For me, it's like the part where they don't capture L seems to be all writing and direction and not acting. Because I've seen this actor in a number of movies at this point. In particular, he was the
He's like in one of the core like horror scenes that happens in Get Out. That's in the trailer and everything. Of the one guy that's like smiling and he's brainwashed, but he's also like breaking inside and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's the guy that when the picture was taken of him, he's like, "What did you just do?" Like that guy.
Yeah, where the picture's taken of him and he breaks out of it for a moment and breaks, it's like he has a lot of control as an actor and he can do a bunch of cool stuff, and that shows in scenes of this movie. But the decisions of what he should do is being made by other people, and a lot of those decisions seem really wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not faulting any actors. Like, you just take a gig, you know?
Yeah, and you hit a point where his entire emotional crescendo is entirely dependent on a bond between him and Watari, which is not established beyond a scene where he sings for him.
Yeah.
That limo scene's their only scene together in the film, because the film, once again, is just way too fast and way too short to develop any characters. And Watari, I think, spends more time being a kidnapped man than he does being a character in this movie.
Yeah. He does spend more time being kidnapped. Because when he is there, when he is not kidnapped, he's not really in the scenes. He just shows up to give somebody something and then walks away. He never gives any information. He never says anything.
At most, he's usually just standing next to Elle while Elle has scenes with Light's dad and stuff like that.
Pretty much, yeah.
But then when he gets kidnapped, it's some sort of horrible tragedy that we're supposed to buy into as being a huge, huge problem, basically. And here we get into an issue where they've changed the rules to the Death Note again in two ways. One, it's a magical time mind control device that has infinite duration, and you can just tell a guy to do whatever you want for as long as you want.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I didn't understand was I get the idea of saying go find Elle's true name because that's information he would know. He would know where Elle's name is. So it's like tell me where, or go find Elle's true name, and then October something you die. So he just says like, okay, you got like a couple of days to find Elle's name or whatever. And
it's like, why didn't he just make him die later, so that it wouldn't be like down to the wire, since it's the only character he can use. Yeah,
I don't know why he did it so quickly, as if somehow if he waited too long, like they would have figured out he was mind controlled.
But here we get a series of we get several plot holes here at the same time. Yeah, because Watari is a character that does know Elle's true name, because Watari raised Elle. That's the whole point. That's why it says Elle. That's why Elle says that he's known him his whole life, He says he's known him his entire life. So that confirms that in the movie, just like in the anime, he was raised by Watari. We can draw that connection based on our knowledge of the anime and what Elle says. But so in the anime, a person only knows what they know. So that means if you tell them to write something they don't know, they can't do it. But you can get them to give information that they do know. Like there's a part where somebody is told to write down the names of all the people in their squad before they die. Like that's a thing that happens in the anime. So it also
happens in the movie.
Yeah, so you do maintain the knowledge you have in your head when you get mind controlled in the brief moment before your death. In this show, not only is mind control infinitely long as opposed to right before death, but in this movie, you selectively lose knowledge for some reason. Like, if you want to, like, have Watari... If you want to, like, write Watari's name and be like, tell me Elle's name, then he could just tell you. Because he knows it. But for some reason, he has to go hunt down Elle's name for no reason in some abandoned orphanage, because that's the backstory of Elle that's not really ever explained in the movie, but that's why he's there.
I don't know why they even bothered mentioning the orphanage.
And none of that makes sense, because how does he know to go to the orphanage? Like... If you sit down for like 2 seconds, this entire plot point makes no sense, because if he doesn't know Elle's name in mind control mode, why does he know about the orphanage? Why does he know where to get Elle's name? Why does he know all the steps that involve getting Elle's name, but somehow not know Elle's name?
Yeah, he knows exactly where the file room to get Elle's name is and where to look for it, but then just doesn't remember the name?
No, it's like it's baffling. But on top of that,
we also have Atari where the fucking orphanage was, so that maybe he could go there himself.
No. Yeah, he doesn't even think that far ahead of like just tell me where to get Elle's name. But an additional layer of stupid gets here. So one, there's the stupid part where he made the mistake of making his death come way too soon, so that it'd be down to the wire if he can get the name in time, which is stupid, because if you just made his death happen like 3 months from now, you'd have like infinite time to just burn the page. And You could be like, he gets me L's name on October 12th, but he dies on January 17th or something, and it'd be no big deal. But for some reason, he makes his death happen like right when he'd be arriving there.
I think there's a rule about that. I think there's a rule about
if
how
there
long
is, it's not explained, and this is a story about explaining
Anyways,
rules.
Yeah, continue.
But on top of that, what happens is he doesn't specify a cause of death, which raises a question because in the anime, if you don't specify a cause of death, it's a heart attack. In the movie, it appears that if you don't specify a cause of death, it just becomes whatever. And he even says dealer's choice in the scene, like because he doesn't care. So Ryuk takes it upon himself to do whatever he feels like. Watari's cause of death is that a SWAT team shows up to execute him. I'm like, now the Death Note will mind control other people to go kill the person you said should die, and they'll go across it. Like, what the fuck?
No, it's like this weird thing of like SWAT team showed up as if he was breaking into a place that he shouldn't be into, but instead of just arresting him, which he had no weapons on him, instead of arresting him, they just like straight shot him for some reason.
Nothing about his death even begins to make sense, and it's never explained.
They like even ask him like, "Are you Watari?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm Watari." And then they just shoot him.
Yeah, and even Watari closes his eyes like, "I'm going to die now." I'm like, did you read the script? How do you know you're going to die now? How does anyone know what's happening? Like, why are you executing somebody for looking at paper?
And why would you know that that's Watari unless L sent you? In which case, why did you kill Watari if L wanted him
it's either L sent them, which either means that L can't have sent them because L's trying to find Watari in the first place, and you can almost think that maybe he would kill him to save his name from being revealed, but at the same time you could at that point just restrain him so he can't give the name to light anyway. So I don't think the SWAT team was sent by L because none of that really makes sense of how they'd even find him or why they'd kill him. So as far as I can tell, dealer's choice meant magic SWAT team shows up and kills you on the spot for no reason, and apparently the Death Note mind controlled them even though they're not written in the notebook as dying, unless he was also killing a SWAT team, except he wasn't planning on killing Watari, so none of these, nothing makes sense. Like, nothing makes sense about the scene. It's the most infinitely contrived nonsense thing ever, and it's infuriating because this is when L gets irreparably ruined by the story, because once you kill Watari, which is only halfway through the movie, by the way, L becomes an emotional wreck for the rest of the movie and is just running through the streets with guns and screaming at people and just not even vaguely behaving like the character he's an adaptation of. Like this is a movie that can't develop any of its characters, but has multiple scenes dedicated to candy and apples, and has a surprisingly prolonged chase scene with a gun running through random buildings for no reason.
Not only that, L drop kicks a homeless dude.
Oh yeah,
he like straight drop kicks that homeless dude for nothing. He was just like minding his own business.
There's a part where he shoves a guy's face into his own food. Because they run through that Chinese restaurant or whatever, and he shoves somebody's face into their own food. And then he hops up on the bar and runs along the bar. Then he hops back off the bar and runs along the floor. I'm like, why'd you hop on the bar? There was nothing in your way. It's like, they're just like, dynamic chasing. It's dynamic. We gotta keep moving and knocking things over. Dynamic. And it's like...
Yeah, it's really weird,
it looks like they're getting stuff on purpose.
Yeah, and Light wasn't doing anything inherently bad to people. He was just running. Like, even when he ran through the restaurant, he tripped over people because he wasn't paying attention to where he's going.
Yeah.
And the only time he did an inherently bad thing was when he pushed a guy over and then threw the thing he was pushing onto the ground.
Light keeps, sliding in the rain and shit and bumping into people, basically.
But, he
going, sorry.
Yeah, and he looks like he's like, oh, God, sorry, I'm just trying to run. But L is, holding a gun, running through,
there's a part where L's screaming at the top of his lungs while plowing through a bus station and demolishing it.
He is
he destroys a bus stop that could have been filled with people while screaming at the top of his lungs in fury. Well, running around with a glowing gun, which is an interesting note on its own.
Is that a pistol?
I think it's a pistol that has a laser sight.
Okay.
I think that might be why it's glowing. I don't know guns.
I'll take your word for it, man, because I have no idea what the fuck that was.
I don't know guns very well.
Because it didn't have a laser pointer. That's what I thought was weird. Is Light didn't have a laser on him when L's aiming the gun at him.
Yeah, I kept waiting for a reason for the glow gun to come up, because it's never explained why the gun's glowing, but it's very visual that it's glowing. But then he shoots, and it's just straight up, you can tell it's just like a revolver when he's shooting into the air, and it's just really loud. And I'm like, oh, that's just a gun. That's just a gun.
It's just a gun with a weird red light on it.
It's like super weird detail.
Maybe it's like a jelly bean dispenser?
Oh,
maybe the bottom part like gives him candy, so that way he never loses energy while he's shooting people.
But just to rewind a bit, because this is like the ending of the movie.
Sorry.
Slightly earlier, during the Watari segment, they established this incredibly contrived rule because they keep making up new rules for the notebook whenever it's convenient to them. And this one says that if you write somebody's death into the notebook, you can then take out the page about the notebook and burn it. And then if you destroying that notebook page will cause that person to not die as a result. And here's where it gets extra bullshit. They say you can only do it once.
Yeah, that is is weird.
Once per victim, once per like notebook owner, once per notebook period. As far as I can tell, it's once per notebook forever somehow, and nobody's ever used this rule before, and nobody will ever be able to use it again. It's literally contrived for one scene and one scene alone.
I also want to mention something hilarious. By the way, this is I don't get paid to be a writer for Hollywood movies. I would probably do great at it. I'm really great at Googling things. One of the notes on how to use the death note from the anime was, once a victim's name, cause of death, and situation of death have been written down on the death note, this death will still take place even if that death note or the part of the note in which it has been written in is destroyed. For example, burned into ashes.
Yeah, which is one of the nice things about the anime is that one of the nice things about the anime is there won't be an ass pull in that situation.
Yeah,
if it has actually happened, then it will happen. Like there's a finality to it, and the only part that they ever have a fake out is when they have the plot point of the death note being replaced, because they replace it with a decoy at one point, and that's a plot point. But that's fair. That's a fair twist to do. The idea of replacing a death note with a exact copy of the death note in order to trick people, like that is within the bounds of reasonable storytelling in a story about people outsmarting people. But this one's like, here's a special rule that perfectly explains the climax of the film, because that's how bad this movie is. This relies on this contrived plot point for its climax, and it only exists for that one rule, and it can only happen once. Because it's like when you're playing imagination with your friends, and you're like, I shoot you with a laser. Nuh-uh, I got a force field. Like, you're just making it up as you go along. Like that's what this kind of writing is when that happens. It's infuriating.
Another thing that's really I think the other thing that really infuriated me was that no one else could see Ryuk but Light.
Oh yeah, other people would touch the death note and they wouldn't see Ryuk for some reason. To the point where at the end of the movie somehow still I think the way they're defining it is that in this version of the story, only the owner of the death note can see their Shinigami, and that's it, as opposed to everyone who touches it.
That is specifically in a note on the manga and how to use that anybody who touches a death note, any human who touches a death note, can know exactly who the owner is and knows can see the god of death.
It's one of those things that works as a fun mechanic, because you can be like, you can use whether or not people can see Shinigami as a plot point.
Yeah,
like an entire plot point near the end is that somebody has become aware of this thing, so they stealthily touch the death note so they can track the Shinigami when the person who actually has the Shinigami doesn't know that people can see it, and like that, because like that's all the mind games of asymmetrical knowledge and stuff like that makes these stories interesting. But what quickly becomes apparent is that in the middle of the movie, around the time Watari was being captured, like just before that, I think. You have the coffee house scene, where it seems to become apparent that Light is just ready to give up on this entire idea of the Death Note anyway, like halfway into the movie. He's just done with it.
He's over the whole Death Note idea.
And it starts becoming clear that what's actually happening, and it shows up in a twist later when Watari ends up dying, because Light was going to burn the page before he died, and it was because he didn't want to kill innocent people, so he was just manipulating them to get rid of L. which is kind of iffy because that, like, why do you care about killing Watari if you're going to kill L? Like, you're obviously willing to straight up kill people going after you. Why is Watari an exception? Like, if that distinction doesn't make sense to me, that he's going to kill L but not Watari because they're equally complicit in going after him. But they use this as the twist scene to be like, oh, the girlfriend's actually acting against Light, and the girlfriend's the one that killed all the investigators, and the girlfriend killed Watari by hiding the page so it couldn't be burned, and she's actually aspiring to replace Light as the Death Note user. And that's the twist, is that she's the sort of secondary antagonist at some point.
She's like the better Light.
She's way better. She's like so much better.
Because she just shows up out of nowhere and is like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm really cunning and I'm really tactical about it. It's like, what?
She's literally, she in some ways is almost like, there's moments where she's almost Light from the anime.
Yeah, and I was super mad. I was like, then why are you here?
Yeah, why is Light in this movie? Like why is the actual Light
in this movie? Like, if you just wanted to have a female Light, then just make a female Light. Don't do this stupid bullshit where, like, oh, well, the girlfriend was actually a better murderer, a better Kira all along. And it's like,
she actually succeeds at things. Like, the only special plan... The only clever special plan that Light does during the middle of the movie is the Watari thing. And it doesn't work.
And the final scene.
Yeah, the final thing, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But the girl, Mia, she tracks
everything
down.
She does is great.
Yeah, I think she shows up at a parking garage. I think she like tasers one of the investigators that's following Light around. Then goes into his ID, writes his name into the Death Note with the instructions that he will then write all of his co-workers' names into the Death Note, and then they all jump off a building. And it's like, she got shit done.
Yeah, that was like the most effective way to deal with that entire group.
This movie should have been filled with clever moves like that. Instead, there's like one. And it is the only clever one, because the end of the movie is stupid. Everything Light does is stupid.
I just said that it was like the only time Light actually made a plan.
It's the one time Light succeeds at a convoluted plan, but it's a stupid, it's a shitty plan. It's boring and irritating and feels like it's cheating. Whereas her plan was completely within the basic rules of how this thing works, and it didn't feel like any kind of ass pull. It was like a really cool reveal, and is possibly the best plot point of the movie. Let's talk about the dance, this is the scene where he's going to discover that the notebook page is gone for the whole Watari thing, which, first of all, why did you schedule Watari's death to happen during the dance? Day. It's like, first of all, he already made the mistake of scheduling Watari's death to happen.
It was like 48 hours?
Like, he scheduled it to happen at the same time as the time when he was supposed to actually arrive at the name, which meant that he wasn't going to be able to... If he didn't find it quite in time, he would die too early. But it also had the additional problem of being scheduled during the dance when he's going to be distracted and away from any phone or notebook or anything that he might need in order to actually follow through with the plan. So then he has to... No,
it's fine, Keith. He always carries a Death Note around with him all the fucking time.
So this necessitates an incredibly convoluted plan where they have to... It's really stupid. They're at the dance. He has a giant top hat all of a sudden, and... Even though two people are in the room and their entire job is to watch him, the girlfriend shows up with some other guy, and Light just puts the top hat on that guy, like, blatantly in the open, and then just walks away. And those guys are, like, so lazy at their job. They're like, oh, that guy's got a top hat. I guess Light's still here. And they just don't
they act like... Notice. So they do this thing
even
where...
the guy has different colored hair.
Yeah, they walk in...
Light's hair is, like, super highlighted everywhere, and that guy's hair was brown.
So they walk in... The scene is really dumb. So they walk in, Light and Mia walk in, and they go and they start dancing or whatever. A few seconds later, it shows a scene where one of the FBI agents walks into the room and looks directly at Light. Like he looks at them and sees them, and so they're making the thing of like, oh, got to be low key about it, blah blah blah, and they're making some kind of exchange and they reveal information, and then what's it called? Then the Asian guy comes to ask for a dance, or the girl, like he's going and getting punch, and the Asian guy's like, can I dance with your girl? And so then he goes like, yeah, sure, and he takes the hat off and puts it on top of that kid right in the center of the dance, and then they walk off, and then it shows a scene of the FBI agents, and they go like, oh, there he is. as if they somehow lost him when he
just standing in the open in this high school auditorium where he's the guy in the top hat.
He's the only guy with a top hat. Like, why would you did that
both
specifically?
Of them simultaneously happen to look away at that exact moment to not notice the part where he takes off the hat and gives it to somebody else, apparently.
Movies, Keith. Movies, magic.
But this is also, he can run away upstairs to go, like, check the page in the Death Note, and also, like, he's supposed to, in the middle of the dance, get on the phone, call Watari, find out L's name, burn the Watari's page to save his life, then, I guess, write L's name to kill him? Which, yeah, I'll say once again, why not kill Watari then if you're killing L? But why would you schedule this convoluted thing you have to do in a specific time to happen during the dance? It could happen literally any other day.
Another one is, why are you even going to the dance?
Yeah, don't you have more important shit to do?
Like, what the fuck is the purpose?
You have to have more important shit to do than to not go to the dance, because they're not even doing the dance.
Like, the only thing that was useful at the school was the computers, which I guess Light doesn't own a computer or something. He does own a computer. So I don't even know why.
Part of it screams the idea, like in Spider-Man Homecoming is actually a part of the movie, but it actually is like an important climax of the story where it defines who the protagonist is as a person, is a decision he makes in that scene, and there's a reason why he's there and so on. In this movie, as far as I can tell, it's one of a series of decisions made by the director in that it's just visual. They're at the dance because it gives them an excuse to be in a giant glowy blue room surrounded by people, and they can do a slow dance together while face to face, really up close, while the big reveal happens that she's been betraying him. Which is right up there with, like, how he will put an apple in front of a dark door. Then Ryuk will grab the apple with his creepy little hand through the door into the darkness, then chomp away at it. Then, for some reason, throw the apple back into the room. It's one of the many things in the movie that happens just because it's visual, right? Which is why we get the Rube Goldberg death at the beginning.
There was even that time Light walks into his house and Ryuk's sitting at the dinner table with apple cores just all around him. And he's just like, hey, give up the Death Note. And it's like, God, again with
Meanwhile, there's
shit.
Like a whole plot point where it's like, no, Ryuk, you're supposed to eat the cores because you're invisible and you're eating floating apples, so you're supposed to finish eating them.
Yeah.
There's some messy stuff here. All right, so I think we're ready to go towards the ending, which is at this point. Are we ready
for the final lap?
It gets really fucked, which is that, like as we said before, he's getting chased around by L in public with a gun while he's just some unarmed kid running around. So like immediately it looks like looks like L's the bad guy throughout this entire scene.
It looks like he's being mugged.
He's the one that's actively endangering people throughout the scene. Yeah. And I will point out that this chase scene happens an hour and 15 minutes into the movie. That's how little development and how little duration there's been in it. At this point, we're only an hour and 15 into the movie, and L has only been in the movie for 45 minutes total. Not even talking about how long his scenes are. I'm talking about like from establishment as a character existing to the chase scene. It's only been 45 minutes, which is so brief to summarize the entire conflict between the characters. Because after the chase scene, he's basically out of the movie until almost like what borders on being a post-credits cliffhanger. Yeah,
like a post-credit cliffhanger.
Yeah, like so his entire story is told over the span of 45 minutes of a 90-minute movie for some reason, which even though the whole point is supposed to be these two characters going against each other. But this very long chase scene eventually ends in the two wannabe Kira characters both in a Ferris wheel together. And it wasn't like this wasn't like a desperate random thing. Like they didn't you could almost forgive it if they just kept running and they just ended up there and like, fuck, we're trapped on this pier.
Yeah.
But one of them gets a text message from the other one to meet at the Ferris wheel. Their plan as two people being chased by a horde of cops is to get on a Ferris wheel.
It was all of Light's plan. It was all according to his crazy idea that he came up with in a school building.
Yeah, but I just mean like literally all that could happen is that they would be trapped on an amusement park ride for maybe 10 minutes until they then get on the ground again and get arrested by a horde of cops.
Well, he shot the thing, so I don't think it was going to move.
No, it was still moving. He shot the thing so it couldn't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
Because it keeps cutting to other shots, so you can clearly tell the Ferris wheel's still rotating. So they're literally like on borrowed time. And what are they doing? Like, this is where they ruin their true light, the girl that actually is being the real light throughout this movie by actually being clever, is that she stops being clever. She becomes very stupid in this scene.
Yeah.
Which is she agrees to meet him in the Ferris wheel while being chased by cops, even though there's nowhere to go from there. It's a dead-end trap. And then even when they're trapped, neither of them are even considering the idea of how doomed and trapped they are. They're arguing over who gets to keep the notebook that neither of them will ever get to use again because they're on a Ferris wheel that's surrounded by cops, and the only outcome... He knows that he's sabotaging it, but the only ending she could possibly see for this is that they're all going to get caught. So,
well, not her. I mean, technically, Light will get caught and then die because remember, he'll die the moment that she takes the notebook.
No,
or no, she's gonna take the notebook and then burn his page.
If
right?
What is it? This got iffy for a while, so I have to think back, because at the time I interpreted it as being that she wrote that he'll die of a heart attack unless he transfers ownership of the notebook. I thought that was what was going on, but I think when you finally see the page burning, you realize it actually just says that he'll die and that's it. So I think it does have to be burned. But definitely, like, they're both...
Did she give a date?
Midnight.
Right, midnight.
She said she said Light's heart stops at midnight and it had to be burned, which somehow which actually happens, which is amazing. But it's just like neither of them. The idea that they think that it was just so funny in the moment to have them arguing about who gets to keep the notebook when they're already surrounded by police on a Ferris wheel where they can't go anywhere at that point. Like, that, it was just such a weird mess at that point, and they just were still arguing about custody battles, basically, and I'm like, what is happening right now? Why would they agree to go here for any reason than, yes, once again, so there's a visual in the movie? Like, the only reason to have a Ferris wheel in the movie is because it's up there with the Ryuk apple, or the other thing we talked about a moment ago, I forgot, where, the dance, where it's only in the movie because they wanted a visual to put into it. So, like, they wanted to have a slow motion scene of them falling off a collapsing Ferris wheel, which I think was supposed to be a climactic scene, but I laughed.
Yeah, I laughed.
I laughed so hard.
Oh, God, it looks stupid.
Because the Ferris wheel starts collapsing and they start falling off of it, and it's in slow motion, which is, on that level, that's kind of fine. You just play some dramatic music or something.
Yeah.
Instead, they start playing like an 80s power ballad or something.
Yeah, they play like a fucking power ballad. I was like, wait, are we like, is this the end of Transformers, the animated movie? Or is this like actually a serious movie going on? Like, I expected, like,
the
you got this touch.
lyrics, like, I don't want to face the night alone. I could never make it through my life if I had to make it on my own.
Yeah.
I don't want to love nobody else. Like, it's one of those irritating 80s songs. And it's
like, yeah, it's an 80s love power ballad. And you've got like the really shitty, like, dun 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 dun, you know, kind of like the really old sounding guitar, like it wasn't recording on a good recorder, and like, yeah, it was like the worst song you could pick. Like, it was literally the worst song you could pick for this movie. And I don't know, like, you could have even done I would have preferred the opener for season 2 of Death Note to be playing at that moment rather than
it was up ballad. There with the sex scene musical cue from Watchmen, where I'm like, I can't tell if I'm supposed to be laughing right now, but I am. It's like I don't know if Glory Glory Hallelujah was supposed to be funny in Watchmen.
Well,
but it made me laugh so hard.
They do the power ballad twice, don't they?
Yeah, a few minutes later they do it again.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
So like, what happens is, this is essentially the end of the movie. But then what happens is Light wakes up in his in a hospital, and his dad was like, "You were Kira the whole time." He's like, "You want to know how I did it? Do you really want to know?" And then he explains how he's alive right now, which is that apparently he found two people. I think one of them was like one of them might have been a murderer, and the other one was a pedophile, I think. And he got one of them to just be the new Kira for a while, which is that he was because he mind controlled both of them because they have super mind control powers. One of them's going to take one of them's going to fish the notebook out of the river and then write people's names in the notebook for like the 2 days while in order to keep Light from being convicted, because like while Light's in a coma, he's going to just be mass murdering people the same way the Light was by just watching TV and writing everyone's names down.
Yeah.
And then the other one was a doctor who is going to keep Light in a medically induced coma for 2 days and then kill himself. And they both kill themselves at the end. And the guy that was killing everybody delivers the notebook to Light finally before he dies. And it's like on one level, it's like it almost works as a twist in this screwed up version of the story where we have mind control powers versions of the notebook that are just way too powerful.
Yeah.
But then before long, what happens is we have L tracking down the spare page that Watari's name was on that was taken away. And it's suggesting that L might write down Light's name for revenge. And while this is all happening, all the revelations are happening, it starts playing another power ballad song for some reason. And then the movie just ends.
Yeah, it just ends with the assumption that L will write down someone's name and that it will just work. That anybody can just write down a name inside of a Death Note, or inside of a Death Note page, and it will just kill those people.
Yeah, it shows Elle finding the name that was stashed by Mia, and it shows Ryuk being like, humans are so interesting, and then it just cuts to hyper-stylized credits while the song continues to play, and I'm like, why did this movie turn into a series of power ballads?
I don't know whose decision that was, but it was the wrong one.
This movie was a mistake.
It's like the tweet that you posted out was you said you were disappointed that Ghost in the Shell wasn't the only bad anime adaptation.
I was disappointed that Ghost in the Shell wasn't the worst anime adaptation.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst anime adaptation.
Because Ghost in the Shell had more good scenes than this movie did. And it had more good visuals, and it had more actually good parts, but all of them combined into a bad movie. Partly because it was making the mistake of putting in scenes from two different Ghost in the Shell storylines, not mixing them out, any of them correctly, and then just throwing it out there. So like the problem was with Ghost in the Shell is it would use like the iconic like water battle scene and the iconic tank scene and the iconic boat conversation, like those memorable moments from the original anime, and
but
then
no context.
Yeah, they would be divorced from the original context. This one's just a weird train wreck of bad ideas and bad characterization and bad script writing and weird constant plot holes. And it's like the only way you can enjoy this movie is if you're the type of person that just turns off their brain and watches pretty things happen, because it's really well shot. It's a pretty movie. Like if you watch this movie on mute with no subtitles, there's a bunch of really good shots throughout the film.
Yeah, if you have no idea what's going on and
everyone's always buying neon lights.
Like this is one of the few times where being deaf is like a great ability, because you can just not turn subtitles on and enjoy yourself a really delightful movie to watch. But otherwise, I would recommend just playing it on mute. Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
It just doesn't work on so many levels. Like it's not Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad was a movie where literally every facet of the film was incompetent. Like the script writing to the editing to parts of the CG to the costume design to the directing, just even parts of the acting, like almost every part of Suicide Squad had things wrong with it. And people have made breakdowns at this point of like how the editing is such a disaster and stuff. This movie shot well, and it has good actors for at least 80% of the roles. Unfortunately, one of them's the lead actor. One of the lead actors, one of the bad ones, unfortunately. Yeah. But there's a bunch of good actors in this movie, and it's shot really well, and it does scenes well oftentimes, but the writing is a nightmare. It doesn't work as an adaptation or standing on its own. In fact, I watched it, and I'd say that because I watched it twice.
Why did you watch it twice?
I watched it like 4 days ago for the purpose of having an initial reaction, and then I was like, okay. When I watched Baby Driver and Wreck-It Ralph, there was like a shock of realizing what the movie actually was that diminished the movie a little bit, and I had to rewatch it to like it more. In Wreck-It Ralph case, it was like the realization of, oh, we're going to be on this place the entire movie. I thought we were going to leave. And so, like, I kept waiting for them to leave the bubblegum place and go on to another cool spot, and they didn't. And that bothered me the first time around because I was waiting for it to happen, and it never happened. So watching a second time was better because I'm like, okay, I know what this movie is now, and I don't have to have weird expectations. So I was like, okay, first time was the shock of realizing this is, like, a horrid adaptation. So I watched it a second time to see if it just works as a movie. And it really doesn't work as a movie. It only works really as just being another faceless movie in the ocean that is bingeable, random, disposable Netflix content that you then forget about forever.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as anything that you're gonna, like, praise on any level. It's just...
Yeah, unfortunately, is not something I would recommend to anybody, ever.
No.
It's not something I'd say, like, yeah, it's, you know, it's worth a watch. Like, it's just not...
The plot's mostly just frustrating because it's a rules-oriented story that keeps making up the rules as it goes along. Which means that it's basically, in many ways, not a story. It's like that. It's like little kids going, "Nah," for a story, and it's just kind of infuriating. So I don't think either of us even begin to recommend this movie.
Yeah, the only thing I could say is, like, the best part about this movie so far, for me personally, has been just the reviews.
Oh, God.
That's it. Reading people's reviews on Netflix is always hilarious. And that's about the only use that you should ever have for clicking on the Death Note.
I'm actually kind of looking forward to, on the review topic, that I think H-Bomber Guy has been tweeting about the idea of working on a review of this movie. I'm like, I want to see that happen. I would be happy to see that happen, because this movie deserves it.
Yeah, Oof, this movie. It's... I'm really hoping that this serves as a point, because this has been happening time after time after time now, where, especially so quickly, where we just had Ghost in the Shell, and now we had Death Note, and both of them were terrible flops. It's hard to judge it based on
We'll see.
Death
We don't
Note.
know yet for Death Note, because Netflix just hides how well everything does.
Yeah, I don't know how Netflix
it's not critically received well, or even received well by fans, seemingly, but if it makes money, they might not learn the lesson at all.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you even judge that at all with Netflix. I don't know how you judge if it made money or not.
I think they would just go by sheer viewership, basically.
But you don't show ads.
Yeah.
So you're not making money off of that.
I think they look at just the sheer amount of viewership, and then they judge on some level whether or not that affects their subscriptions. Like, are there a bunch of new subscriptions when they released it, or is there a huge amount of viewership, and that would signify whether or not they continue with that strategy. Probably is just whether or not they think it's good for maintaining a subscription base. Because I mean, they do Ashton Kutcher and Adam Sandler stuff too, and I'm sure it's all garbage.
Yeah. In any case, I'm hoping that this starts to prove as a very, very good lesson that just don't do that. Don't make anime movies. Like, you're not gonna do it. Like, that's the thing. You're never gonna do it, and it's not gonna work, because art is a perfectly fine medium. These are already. It's not like a book. Like, anime is already a visual medium. There's no reason to make it no reason to re-visualize a medium if it works fine. And you can't compact 32 episodes into an hour and 40 minutes. Like, you can't do that.
That's the biggest thing, is you can't make, like, 30 episodes into 90 minutes, where it's like, every episode will get 3 minutes of playtime. Like, that's the convention level there.
And it basically means you're just going to have iconic scenes from 38 episodes or whatever, 34 episodes.
It's going to try to call back to 3 specific things, usually, with none of the context, so it's just not going to work, and it's going to be a weird nightmare.
I mean,
I think you can technically adapt an anime, but it would have to be a show. It can't be a movie. You can't turn an anime into a movie.
You might be able to make, like, a decent Death Note TV show.
If you, then you have to pay respects to why people like the thing.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, as long as you don't hire Moffat, I think you could do a good job.
Yeah, because this felt like it only had a superficial idea of what people like, which is like, it's a notebook that kills people, and that guy's rival eats candy and stuff like that. It's like, that's not the important. Stop showing me shots of candy. Develop the character, please.
it's really weird because you can't just pay somebody to watch a 34 episode show and then write a script based on it. But no one does it. So is it that hard? Like, I'm sorry, Netflix literally has fucking the Death Note anime on its service. There's no excuse why its own which is there's no excuse why its own writers can't watch their content on their own medium and then write a script based on that. How did this happen? Like, I can understand if it was just a manga. Like, say you took an anime, or you made an anime film based solely on something that was a manga. Okay, yeah, if you get it fucked up a little bit, that's fine. I understand. You're not going to expect someone to read 35 volumes. Death Note is sitting there, and it's been sitting there for years on Netflix. Just watch it.
I'm just in the camp where I'm like, I'm cool with them. If they want to change the story, that's fine, but they need to keep the same... They at least need to pay respect to the basic ideas that were why the show worked, which is to have
keep the characters.
Two rival characters playing head games, preferably being actually the same characters.
Yeah,
and
I don't understand why you can't just
mechanics.
do that.
You can tell your own story with those mechanics, but you can't just like throw it all out the window and just call it Death Note and then have this happen.
And that's the thing. That's what most anime movies, most of them feel like at this moment.
Because if you do that in your adaptation, you're just like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, it becomes a thing where it's like everyone who liked the thing won't like your thing because it wasn't like the thing, and then everyone else doesn't know what the thing is, and so they don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't set up brand recognition because people aren't going to be like, oh yeah, Death Note 2. It's a sequel to that Death Note thing I watched on Netflix, I think, once. I don't remember.
But Dragon Ball is actually a good point, by the way. It's like this is more this is less comparable to Ghost in the Shell adaptation and more comparable to the Dragon Ball Evolution adaptation and how it's like unrecognizable to the source material.
Yep. No, I didn't forget. I never forget Dragon Ball. It was a very fun time.
Boy.
Just please stop. Just stop while you're ahead, Netflix. You did it once, it didn't work out.
So final conviction, I suppose, or consensus. Don't watch Death Note unless you're specifically getting a group of friends together that are fans of Death Note that are going to hate watch it together or something.
This is a really great movie to get drunk with your friends to and watch a terrible, terrible movie you'll probably laugh at, especially when power ballads kick in.
Oh my god. Why was that was so funny? Why was the climax so funny?
You're just gonna laugh. You're gonna fucking laugh the moment that the scene happens and you see two people falling to their death and a power ballad goes and it's like, I can't live without you. And you're like, I don't even know anymore, man. Why am I here? How did I get here? Is this...
All right, go ahead and post your hateful comments down below. See you guys next time.
Yeah, bye.